bit, and I'm not sure how this one's going to go. But last week, kind of in sharing, I know that, and I'm not picking on Bev, sorry, but sort of. See, somebody comes in, takes things. Anybody ever have anything taken from them? Nobody's ever had anything taken? People come and just took stuff? And how annoying and how weird that feels. It's like, and this is a good idea. If you're a thief or thinking about being a thief, this is a great idea. Wait till they go to church. And then they go to church at, say, 10:30, and they're in there till noon. So say the Mission Pentecostal Church, on night service, they go in at whatever time it was, and they come out. They're going to be in there so we can break into their cars, and it'll be okay. And you can steal stuff. And so it was a really weird feeling coming out, seeing my stereo system was broken into, and it all kind of disappeared and all that. It was a weird feeling that they took something from me and didn't ask, because it was mine. That's how I felt. They didn't ask me about it. And so I've been jostling with that, so I kind of came up with a little something to say last week about that. But I want to turn it into a sermon, but I want to take it a little bit, I want to blow it up a little bit more. So when we were talking about, does anybody have any prayer requests or, praise reports? And I kind of had one just right on the fly, and it's, I don't know how well you know me, but I get irritated. People irritate me sometimes. And this is my own OCD control thing, whatever it might be in my life, that I am working on. God's working on. But I can get irritated, and it's been really bugging me, and I know it bugs Cindy a little bit. And no, she doesn't bug me. She doesn't irritate me. But sometimes people do. No, none of you people are irritating me, so don't think that. But I do get irritated, and as I was sitting there, and people were saying God just spoke to me, and he just said, because I didn't think I should share it, and so it goes good with the sermon. He just said, why don't you try looking through my eyes? That's what he said. In my heart. Might as well have said it with a voice. It was louder than a voice, but he said, instead of looking with your eyes, start looking with my eyes. And so I think it's going to help a little bit. So I want to give praise for that. So when it comes to prayer, if you've got something to say, I talk enough up here, so I don't want to say more than I have to. But when it comes to prayer requests, do you ever have a prayer request that we all want something from God? Do you not agree that there is something in our life? No, I don't have any prayer requests. I don't think God could do anything better in my life. It's all perfect, and I have arrived here on earth. Or is there a prayer request that you would like to have in your life, but you don't ask about it? Because you think that you don't need it. And so this comes from the book of This comes from the second chapter of the book of your stupid cousin Johnny, who says that God wants you to be holy, but doesn't necessarily want you to be happy. So I want to talk about this little area. And I'm not what was that back in the day? There was a name it and claim it. I'm not a name it and claim it kind of guy. Now, I grew up in a church back home, and I remember this song. And I don't know if we sang it in church, but it was called Jesus on the Main Line. Catchy song. And so I got this song, Yes, Lord, Yes. And so maybe, and I don't want to sing this song. Jesus on the Main Line, tell him what you want. If you want that diamond ring, tell him what you want. That's kind of name it and claim it. I'm not for that. But what I'm saying is, sometimes we think there's something in our lives that we want God to give back. So, for example, I want to just take this kind of, make it all make sense. So something's been taken in your life, or something has been removed in your life, and so there you are sitting in what has been removed. And so maybe you've been removed, like, say, the Israelites from their own land, and now they are slaves, and then they are set free, but then they are walking in the wilderness. And sometimes you have to appreciate where you are, that God feeds you during the famine. You have to be able to be appreciative of what God does when you're in the famine or the food has been removed. But then at the same time, I believe that you have to be willing to go back to what has been taken from you. I think that you have to have that ability to go, you know what? That was taken from me. I want God to bring it back to me. And so I want to talk about that, this whole thing about Elisha. If you read the Old Testament in 2 Kings about what Elisha did through, God working in it, it is crazy. The stories about what this guy did. And so I want to talk about a few of his stories. And the one story that I want to talk about, and I want us to take our life. So if I have said something here like, yeah, there is something in my life that I would like prayer for, but I don't want to ask for it because it's okay, I can just deal without it. You're going to fit right fine into this story because there's this woman. She's the Shunammite. How do you say that? Shunammite woman? And anyway, the Bible says in the New Testament, she's a well-to-do woman. She's well off. And so anyways, Elisha goes through this town, and he's going through, and she really likes what Elisha's doing. He's a man of God. She recognizes it. And so she says to her husband, who's very old, she says to her husband, she said, this guy, this Elisha, this man of God, this prophet of God, he's coming through town, and I really appreciate what he does. And so this is what I want to do for this prophet of God. I want to set up a room. I want to build a room in the top of our house. And so she goes to IKEA, and she builds this little section for him. She buys a bed. She buys a lampstand. She does this stuff. She makes a little room for Elisha to stay. And so he stays there, and she feeds him, and she looks after him. And Elisha goes, this is really nice. And so she does this Shunammite woman, she does this without asking anything from God. There's no thing that she's asking. She does it just because she wants to be found as a servant for God. But Elisha looks at her and says, is there anything I can do for you? Is there anything that God can do for you? And she says, no, I'm fine. I'm part of a family, and I live with my people. I'm good. But we all want something. Do we not all want something? Is there not some place that God could bless you in your life as we speak right now? Is there not has anybody, can you just put up your hand if you say there is no more room for blessing from God? Is there somebody here that can say that? And I believe that God has blessed me beyond belief, but I still can find a couple spots. I know there's some spots. But she said, no, there is nothing that you can do for me, Elisha. I just am happy. And so this is her testimony. So when you think about testimonies, and Cindy said the word testimony today, this is your story. But be careful about your story that you don't cut it off too soon. Because her story was this. Elisha's coming through town. A man of God is coming through town. I actually have some things in my mind that God can do for me, but I'm willing to just try to be holy and not happy, so I'm going to set up a room for him, and that's going to be good, and that is my story. I lived to serve God, and you cut it off. But then you go to 2 Kings chapter 8, and the story continues. But I'm going to continue back here. I don't want to, mess you guys up and confuse you, but this woman, he looks at her and goes, there's nothing I can do for you? And I think it was Gehazi, who was Elisha's servant. He says, well, she's got no sons, and her husband's old. Isn't God's timing unbelievable? Because he's too old. And she said, my husband's too old for her, And he said, well, this is what's going to happen. In a year, around this time, you will be holding a baby boy in your arms. And she looked at him, and she pushed back the promises of God. And she said, do not mislead your servant, man of God. Or in our words, she said, don't mess with me. Because she's wanted a son for a long time. Never had it. So she thinks, I guess I just got to be holy. And she read from her stupid cousin's book in chapter 2 of, there going, you can't be happy. So I'm willing to just be, and you can't, I don't think we're always going to be happy all the time. But what I'm saying is she was willing to push back the promises of God. And Elisha says, do whatever you want. A year from now, you're going to be holding a baby boy. And this happened. And so she got this little baby boy. And so this thing, this secret want in her life, God blessed her. And it turns out you can be happy. And so this boy was growing, and he was out in the field, and they were reaping, doing their reapings out there, and they're harvesting and all that stuff, and this boy got a headache. This little boy got a headache, and so he started screaming and yelling, and they brought him in, and the boy died. And she's like, I didn't even ask, because there's nowhere in the Bible that it spoke. When Elisha said, a year from now, you are going to get a baby boy. You're going to have a baby boy. And he walked away, and he went away. And it doesn't say anywhere where she had great faith, and she went to faith school, and she did all this right stuff about how to pray that God would come into your life and allow these promises to come in. It doesn't say anything about that, except that she held a baby boy a year later, and this baby boy was outside working in the fields with his dad, and he got a headache, and the baby boy, the little boy, dies. And so she can't believe it. I didn't even ask for this, and now it's been taken. And so she brings the little boy, and she puts him on the bed. The very bed that she made for Elisha to sleep on. Because this is where the promise came from this room. And so she put him in there, and then she goes looking for Elisha, and as the story goes on, Elisha comes back. Gehazi is the servant, and he's like, maybe if I put my cane on him, it'll be okay. So he puts the cane on the boy, nothing happens. And Elisha says, get out of the way, y'all. I got to get in there. This is what's going to happen. And so he lays on the boy, and anyways, he prays, and he breathes mouth to mouth, and he breathes life. God breathes life through Elisha into the son, and he's alive again. And now we are in 2 Kings chapter 8. 2 Kings chapter 8. Now we are there. And this is the story that I want to talk about. You're going, are you kidding me? We've already talked about a story. This is the boy, and this is the woman who is in the very courts of the king. So this woman, who really wanted a boy, but didn't want to ask for the boy, got a boy, lost a boy, and got the boy back. And now she has showed up into the courts of the king because she was told by Elisha that there's a famine coming and you need to get. And so she runs away with her son, and for 7 years she's gone, but she comes back, and her home that she had was taken by somebody else. And so now she is coming back. She walks in to the courts of the king. And I want to just jump back a little teeny bit. Are you guys still with me? Okay. So she walks in, because this is what you do. When something is taken from you, you need to go to the court of your king. You need to go to the heavens. You need to take it to the heavens. You need to give it to God. And so she knew what to do. And she took what was lost in one season. This boy was lost. She never had him, then she had him, then she lost him, but she got him back. And she drug what she had lost in one season. And now she is dragging this boy into a season now that she is struggling with, that she had lost but was given back. And as she shows up, I'm going to jump back maybe 25 minutes in the past. So she shows up, here she is, boom, she shows up. I'm going to jump back 25 minutes in the TV show. And And there's this guy Gehazi again. And he's in the courts of the king. Because the king wants to know about Elisha and all the things that he's done. So the girl hasn't showed up yet. But she's like 20 minutes down the road. She's coming. She's coming, okay? And Gehazi's there. And the king says, you know about this Elisha stuff. What? I hear there's great things. And Gehazi, who's the servant of Elisha, says, oh yeah, I know a lot of things. Like this Elisha, this is what he did. I want to tell you, it's an amazing miracle. Elisha once was challenged by these people because they didn't know that he was, a real man of God. So this was going to be a test. If you take your cloak and you put it on the Jordan River, will it part? Let's see, man of God. Let's see if it'll happen. And so Gehazi says, Elisha just takes his cloak and he puts it in the water. It splits. And it pushes back. And the people go, holy mackerel. He is a man of God. Can you see what it is? This is what Elisha did. And the king's going, wow, this is crazy. And he said, I got more. And Gehazi's talking, right? It's 15 minutes before this girl's going to walk in with this little boy who she kind of wanted, but she never would ask. And then Elisha said, you're going to get him anyways. And so she got him, and then she lost him. And then she got him back again. We're 15 minutes away. So he told one story. This is what Elisha did. Well, that's crazy. He's an amazing man. Well, this isn't it. He did more stuff. He walked into this town, and the water was poisoned. And so he said, give me some salt. So he took the salt, and he threw it down, and it cleansed the water. And he said, your water will not be poisonous anymore, and everyone could drink again. Wow, that's crazy. And then he said, you know what? There's more. There was this confederation of kings, and Elisha didn't even like him. But he liked Jehoshaphat. He said, lucky for you that I like Jehoshaphat. And so because I like him, I'm going to do something. And it's because you guys, the reason that they had Elisha, this confederate group of kings, is because they didn't have any water. They were in a drought. And Elisha looks at them and he says, you're lucky. Jehoshaphat's my friend. And so this is what I'm going to get you to do to remedy this problem. I want you guys to go dig some ditches in your cities. But God's going to drop rain down, but it's not going to come down how you normally see it. It's going to maybe come sideways, and it's going to fill your ditches with water, and you will be fine. And it happened. And the king's going, my goodness. And Gehazi's like, he's getting revved up. Why is he getting revved up? Because he's rehearsing the things that God has done in the past. And he says, there's more. And then there was these kids. And Elisha kind of had a bald head. And the kids were making fun of him. And so there was these bears in the bushes. And he was going to call them out to mob. And never mind, I don't want to talk about that one. So anyways, there's more stuff that he did. There's all these crazy things. There was this woman who had a little bit of oil. And he said, go get that little bit of oil. And this woman, she said, it's really nothing, but God says, you know what you think is nothing, I will turn into something. And so she goes and gets the oil, and she gets all this crazy amount of oil, and Elisha's a part of this miracle. And the king's like, I've heard this is a lot of stuff. We're about 5 or 10 minutes away from the woman walking into the courts. So it's coming. It's just like Netflix, where you can forward and you can go back. Right? So let's go back 5 minutes before this woman comes in. And so Gehazi has told all these stories about what Elisha has been involved in and how God has worked through him. And then there was one story that Elisha did that Gehazi didn't talk about. And he should have. Remember Naaman? He was that great commander, and he had leprosy, and he kind of hid it, but it wasn't getting any better. And he's like, I heard about this guy named Elisha. And so he comes to him, and Elisha doesn't even really want to speak to him, and he gets his servant to go talk to him, and Naaman gets offended by it. I'm a pretty great guy, you should be coming out to talk to me. And so it doesn't happen. Elisha just gives some direction. You need to go into Jordan. I think it was the Jordan. To bathe in. But you're not going to just get healed when you go in it the first time. And the commander's like, Naaman's like, that's a dirty little river. Like there's cleaner ones, Farfar and Abner. Those are clean ones that maybe I should be going in. I don't want to go in a dirty river to get healed. That makes no sense. He said, you need to go into Jordan, and you need to go in not one time, not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Remember, we spoke about this 7 times. This is how you need to do it. And so Naaman listens. So he's telling the king, Gehazi's telling the story about that Naaman, that great chief commander, and he had leprosy, and he went in the 7th time, and he came out, and he was healed. And he couldn't believe it. He was so happy. And he said, you know, Elisha, I got some gifts. I got some stuff. I want to repay you. Like, makes sense, right? Look what you've done. I'll give you a bunch of stuff. And Elisha says, no, I don't need it. Gehazi is not telling this story to the king. You know why? Because after Elisha said, no, I don't want it, Gehazi went back. He went back to Naaman and he said, my master, maybe I do this, I don't know. My master said he didn't want it, but he changed his mind, so he said, can you give it to me? And it's like, Naaman said, yeah, sure. So he gives all the stuff to Gehazi, the guy that's in the king's court right now. So he gave it to Gehazi, and he's not telling this story. And he gets all this stuff, and he hides it from Elisha. But Elisha knew what was going on, and he called him on it. And Gehazi got leprosy. What is Gehazi, a leper, doing in the courts of the king? This is a story that he didn't tell. But I do want to know one thing. He's in the courts of the king, and he did have leprosy. And the reason I bring this story up is because you may go, I'm not that woman who just wanted to just do great things for God and do a whole bunch of stuff and not maybe have God bless me. I'm more, I don't know, I've done some selfish things. I've done some things that are kind of shady. I've done a couple of things here and there. Then you fall into Gehazi's group. Just because you're not all, it sounds like this Shunammite woman, she was very, had it together. Gehazi was sneaky. But there is still room. You can still be restored. Are you guys with me still? You can still be restored, even if you are sneaky, even if you are shady, even if you did lie, even if you did take. If you fall under the blood of Jesus Christ, this story can be yours, and you can say to God, I want it back. And he got his health back, and now he is in the court of the king. Boom, we've arrived. And now, king, I got another story. There's this woman. She's a well-to-do woman. She made this thing. She shopped at Home Depot or IKEA, and she made this place for us. She didn't want anything, but she really wanted a son, but she kind of gave it up, and she pushed back the promises of God. And then my master, Elisha, said, you're going to have a son this time, next year. And she did. And this son died in the fields. But then Elisha, I was going to do it. I was going to do the healing. And he said, get out of the way. I need to go in. And so he went in the room. And I don't know what they did. But when the door was open, they both came out. And that boy was alive. And at that very moment, that woman and her son walks into the courtroom. Is not God's timing perfect? God's timing is perfect. I don't know if she missed if she hit every, so see when I travel, I hit every red light. Anybody ever like that? You just hit the red lights.
Yes.
And then there's Cindy who never hits a red light. I don't know if she hit every red light to be on time, or if she hit every green light to be on time. But when she walked into the court of the king with her son, Gehazi was just then talking about her. As he was talking about her, the woman and the son walks in and he goes, there they are. I've learned to trust God's timing. Over my life, I have begun to learn to trust God's timing. So, normally I speak from the NIV, and Lynn's kind of, and Ed are kind of like King James Version people, so I do this for you. There's a verse. I don't know, God. I don't know if I'm buying what he's selling. What Marty's saying about you can ask God for it back. Because, we can't get it all. Maybe you can't get everything back. But I believe that we're called to be holy, but I think that we're also called to be happy. And this is a cool verse. Psalms 119, verse 125 and 126. I am thy servant. Give me understanding that I may know thy testimonies. What has been done in my life. I have to talk about what has been done. This is my testimony. And it's not over yet. Be careful for that woman who, if she would have stopped her testimony when she made the room, I'm just going to do stuff for God. I'm going to be a servant for God, and I'm going to cut the testimony off there. But be careful, because all of a sudden you might get a son. But it's going to be found under God's timing. God's timing is so weird compared to our timing. Because I want it right now. I want it at 2 o'clock, Lord. But our trust and our faithfulness will grow according to, that's why his timing is so that we will grow under his timing. That's our trust, it'll grow. And so here it is. I am thy servant. This is going to make you guys breathe better. You're going to need to hear this. I am thy servant. Give me understanding that I may know my testimonies. Don't ever forget what God has done. Like Gehazi, he was rehearsing the things that God had done. Don't ever, ever forget to do that. Now this is good. Ever get tired of fighting for yourself? Ever get tired? I said it a few times. I'll scrap it out. I'm going to fight, but I get tired of fighting. Here a couple of weeks ago, I was tired of fighting. Anybody else just want to kind of fight and you get tired? But you still want to fight, right? You still got that fight in us, but you get tired. Now listen to this. Just take a deep breath when I say this. It is time for thee, Lord, to work. It is time thee, Lord, to work. It's your time. For they have made void thy law. So at my place, when Cindy's cooking, and she knows how to cook way better than me, and there's a spot in front of the fridge and the stove that I always find myself, and she gets mad at me, get out of here. It's in that spot where she works and does her stuff. And it's basically a scream at me, get out of the kitchen. God is saying, with what has been taken, that what you are struggling with, God is saying, it's time for thee to work. It's time for me to work. That's God. It's time for you to get out of the kitchen. Because you have tried so much, and you have tried so hard, and you've manipulated so much that you've actually made it worse. He says, get out of the kitchen. How's that sound? It sounds refreshing to me, because I'm not a good cook, but I get in the way. And Cindy says, get out of the way. So I get out of the way. So she comes into the courtrooms of the king, and this is what you're supposed to do with what you've lost. So she's had a lot. She's had a lot of things, and she just wanted to be a servant. She said, don't mislead me. Elisha says, you know what? Do you want a boy? She says, you know what? I'd like to, but I don't want to stick my neck out there and trust that much right now. I've asked so many times. So don't mislead your servant. Don't mess with me with this stuff. And so she received the son, and she lost the son, and then she got him back. And now she's taken her son. Now when you have lost something, you need to, there's a sequence. Rehearse what God has done in your life. And then you take what you have rehearsed, you drag that boy, and this is what God has done. He has given him back. He first of all gave him, and then it was taken, and then he was given back, and now she is dragging what God has done in the past to face the very thing that you are facing right now in the present, and remind it of what God has already done. That's what we're supposed to do. So whatever you are facing, take what God has already done, and you bring it in the room. You bring it in a room and you tell that testimony. You speak your testimony. You speak of what God has done. And then you say, it is time for thee to take care of those things that they have done to me. And so she has lost her house. And she walks in, and this sequence of this is what God has done. Gehazi did the groundwork for her already. He named it. This is what God's been doing, right? All these things. He's just crazy. It's what God's been working through Elisha. And then she walks in, the groundwork's already done, but she grabbed what was taken from her in the past, and she brings that to the future, to the present very thing that she is facing, to tell them, this is what God's done in the past. I expect for it to be done. Now, this is the story. This is your testimony. Be careful not to cut it off too quick. I lost, man, God gave me a son and then I lost him. The end. Or maybe there's more. Maybe there is 2 Kings chapter 8. Wow, I got him back. It's amazing what God did. But all these things that God does in our lives, and yet we are able to forget what God has done. We forget to tell that story. But you're going to tell a story, regardless. We're going to tell some kind of story. And I'm just going to say this in closing here. This is the story that we will tell. We will tell the story of God's faithfulness, of what He has done in our lives. Or we will tell another story, and that is the story of fear. What is going to happen next? What's going to fall apart next? You ever been there? What's going to happen next? I'm freaking out. I think this is going to fall apart. This is falling apart. And now I'm like, what's next? What's next? And that's the story you're going to tell. If you don't tell the story, rehearse the stories that God has done in your past, you will tell a different story, and it will be a story of fear. So we have that choice. What story are we going to tell? Because this is it. This is your story. I am a child of God. Peace is mine because I am a child of God. Joy is mine because I am a child of God. Freedom is mine because I am a child of God. Even if I'm like Gehazi, go and really be sneaky and really be kind of, whoa, you're the servant of Elisha, a great prophet. You went and did that stuff behind his back. Did you not think that he was going to know? And he did. Even if you find yourself there, even if you find yourself like the Shunammite woman with, no, I'm just going to do this for the Lord. Well, I'm not that good. I'm more of a Gehazi kind of guy. I'm over here. Even if you find yourself on either side of the fence like that, there is room in the king's court if you fall under the blood of Jesus Christ. I believe that. Do you believe that? I believe that. Thank you very much.